And good morning. It's time now for Panola Pride here on KGAS. Panola Pride with your host this morning, Jerry Hansen.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome to another edition of Panola Pride, the heartbeat of East Texas. My guest today is Mrs. LaGrone, and yes, we'll be talking about historical facts about the Arklatex. Before we get into our program, though, may I make some announcements?
Yes, sir.
In behalf of the Panola County Historical and Genealogical Association, their regular meeting will be next Monday evening at 7 p.m. You'll be meeting at the old jail
And we
library.
will elect officers.
And this is the officer election time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, very good. Again, that meeting for the Panola County Historical and Genealogical Association at 7 p.m. this coming Monday evening. Everyone is welcome. Be sure to be there and
Right.
cast your vote.
Right.
You vote on Monday, and everybody else votes on Tuesday. And,
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of voting going on.
Voting is in fashion right now.
That's right. Reminding everybody that tomorrow is the last day for early voting in Panola County or in the entire area for Texas. So you want to be sure and get your ballot in if you want to cast an early vote. The last time to do that is Friday, and I believe 4 o'clock is what time our polls close here.
And everybody that has any news better get it out because there's not going to be anything to put in the news.
That well, it's going
When
to
the
be
election
slim.
is over, there's nothing to advertise.
Going to be slim. All righty, we have a very interesting program today, and I always feel good when you walk into the studio with a smile on your face and saying, "I have found another gem."
Found it right. Found a document that I didn't know we had, and it's another shoe fall. First of all, I want to say that I've had amazing response from last week's broadcast.
Very good.
You remember we talked about stealing of documents and selling them and so on, and all of my friends say, "You got pretty riled up, didn't you?" I said, nothing riles me up more than for people to just deliberately pick up things that belong to somebody else.
I felt like at the end of the program I should say the opinions expressed on this program are those of Mrs. LaGrone and not this station.
Well, our members did not realize the danger, really, though we've been taking care of the treasures we have down there
Sure.
as best we could. But we'll be on our toes even more.
Well, I think it's very fitting to point out that there are
these things do happen.
Yes.
And people come in with portfolios of what they're searching on, and we haven't any right, we think, to search those portfolios, but we may have to.
I
before
think
they
that-
leave the library.
I think that it would be wise to start doing that.
They do it in the large libraries. You don't take a thing in and keep it without somebody seeing what it is. Okay. In trying to find something different, and I'm always pillaging, you know, we had stored away in a safe drawer 4 of these ledgers, I guess, or appointment books of Dr. Reagan's that have been there since we got the treasures. And because it's a tedious thing to go through them, I filed them away where they'd be safe and nothing had happened to them. And I've taken them out several times and pillaged through them and decided, well, I haven't got time today to go through page by page of this. I'll put it back and get back to it. Well, I went into that same file drawer this time, and a miracle happened. Out of this ledger, dated, this ledger is dated April 1855. And these are cases that he treated in 1855, 56, 57. That's the very period when he came to Texas. He got his degree from medical school in Georgia, talking about Dr. Thomas Reagan, got his degree in medicine in Georgia and came to Panola County, approximately got to Panola County in 1856. So this began while he's still in Georgia. But it was his case records after coming to Panola County, and he uses names in this county. Well, this, I had known that much before, that these are dates on these record books. But what surprised me no end was that out of this book dropped a letter, folded up, And I looked at the signature on that letter, and it was my grandfather's brother-in-law, who also was a doctor, Dr. William H. Beers. And I had not discovered this information, but this letter is written at Shreveport in 1871. Dr. Beers, who wrote the letter, died 3 months later of tuberculosis in Shreveport. This letter tells about his getting settled in the hotel in Shreveport, evidently for treatment. Now, you and I were talking about vaguely there's some remembrance of a TB center there at that time. Tuberculosis was rampant 150 years ago or 135 years ago. Okay, not only that, but he says, he writes this letter to Dr. Reagan and says, we're settled, J.W. Stone and I. Well, J.W. Stone was my father, and that sent me into a spin. In 1871, J.W. Stone would have been 5 years old, and his father was dead, had died a year before, and his mother was a widow with 2 little children. This was her older one, my father was. Dr. Beers, now all this I knew already, but this made me put it together. Dr. Beers was a brother-in-law to my grandmother and grandfather. And he and his wife, Edna, took care of all of the children. They didn't have any of their own. Took care of the children. I didn't know that he would take that little boy with him to Shreveport. Probably. He was sort of his champion. And he ran errands for him and that sort of thing. There was no other J.W. Stone. It couldn't have been any other. I went back to the Stone book. I tracked down everything I had on Dr. W.H. Beers. And I found that he died in March of 71. And this letter was written on the 7th day of January that year. My, this was a gem of all gems that tied something together. And not too long after that, actually the next, maybe 2 years later, Dr. Reagan himself died. One of the stories told in our county history on Panola County about Dr. Reagan is that he had a fine carriage, specially made at Henderson. Now, Dr. Reagan made a success of medicine, and so did Dr. Beers. They both had properties, you see, in the county. And Dr. Beers settled out there on Old Grand Bluff Road, just out of Old Bethel. And Dr. Reagan settled on that same road, so they were neighbors. But I never knew they worked together, and those doctors did work together just like doctors do today. Because he tells in this, calling in certain doctors that were in the vicinity. When it's a serious case, they'd have a conference. And they did the best they could for all the ailing neighbors. And it's a tremendous experience to read what they did. Of course, the medicines they had were amazing. Always castor oil and cathartics of various kinds, heat, bleeding. They used all these old-fashioned remedies, but they were doing the best they knew at the time. Okay. He tells this is Dr. Beers writing, home to Dr. Reagan, and he asks him to do something for him. And what it is, he asks him to go out to my place and pick up those buggy irons that I have and use them any way you want to. Did those buggy irons go into the making in Henderson by hand, by special construction, this uh, carriage that Dr. Reagan was known for in his last years. It was told that that carriage was a double-seater and that it was upholstered with baby blue satin and that it was surrounded by fringe on the top. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
And that every year, now he rode horseback on his calls, but every year he and his wife took a vacation in that carriage. And it was known all over the country. And this letter is about irons for making a boogie chassis. Well, you see what a time I had last night. I couldn't go to bed. I pulled out everything I had to put this story together, and it is just amazing. This book, as I said, began in 1855. That's while Dr. Reagan was still in Georgia, but he came to this county the next year, and the book went on through 56 and 57. And he married, after coming here, Dr. Reagan did, married a widow, Rebecca Neely, Stanton Neely. She and her husband had come here, and he had invested in a large holding of land and died suddenly, leaving her with debts, tremendous debts. Well, she soon married after his death. She's a young, beautiful woman, and she soon married this young doctor that had come in, Dr. Reagan. And he took over all that business, and I've gone through all of that in his records. And he managed that estate and built their home that became later the old Daniels home on, and I remember it, on the old Beckville Road. And the old Beckville Road was up the hill from the present Beckville Road, from Beckville to Fairplay. And the old Beckville Road was up on the hill to the in parallel with the present road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where those houses were. And that's where they lived until his death, until after his death. She lived there afterwards. And that was Whitfield. Miss Whitfield was their daughter, see? And Miss Barnett was their daughter. That's time they got spread out with all that, that's half a Beckville. Time all the connected people are involved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and right in that circle now there, just now discovering after all these years, there were my folks too. I knew my great-grandfather, John Stone, was also a doctor. And he lived further out on that same road, along the meanderings of Irons Bayou. That's what the deeds, the original records say. Okay, that was a community of doctors out there. We'll talk about those other doctors later. I'm getting ahead of myself. At any rate, here's what this letter said. And a few words I could hardly make out, but you can look at this as I read. This is the letter written in Dr. Beers's own hand. And here's what he says. Dr. T.J. Reagan, esteemed and respected sir, we are at last located at the Spincon Hotel, while J.W. Stone and myself have purchased mainly the fixtures and furniture inside for continuing the establishment. Should you visit the place, please call and consider yourself at home. So they've established residence in this hotel and have put their own furniture in an apartment, apparently. Okay, she is evidently, his wife is evidently there too. They have no children of their own. And they brought this little boy, my father, with them to Shreveport to live with them because his mother was a widow and had a baby younger, and that baby is Helen Underwood's grandmother, and she was just 6 months old when their father died. So J.W., John, my father, John W., was the older one of the two, and here they were taking him with them. Okay, very probably, he says, you will find much more commodious arrangements than you found at our home in Panola, Texas. In other words, it's a little fancier in this hotel than we were used to at home. And your friend, and now friend, please allow me to trouble you with a request or favor. Where are those buggy irons and the old cast on my place? Take possession of them, if you please, and make such disposition of them as you please, to let this communication satisfy W. James Hoskins. Hoskins is evidently looking after his property out here. So let this letter, show this letter to Hoskins that I've told you to do this. And see, he's a sick man writing back home for things he wants done with his stuff. And of course, being a doctor, he knows how sick he is.
Mm-hmm.
He says, this will show that you have my permission so to do. Next in order, perhaps, is a debt due me by W. Hill. Now, I didn't look up who W. Hill was because he's some other settler in the Beckville area of your neighborhood, and that would be right in the old Beckville area. He owes me $20, and that's a whole lot of money in 1871, which, should he pay you, you can, on hereby authority, receipt for. In other words, if he pays you, give him a receipt. Perhaps some others, there may be other business I need to tell you about, I will want to see whether they come in and pay. With the most cordial assurance of the kindest and most esteemed feelings of self and family, allow me to subscribe myself, William H. Beers. This is January 7, 1871. Now, the importance of this letter are these facts, not just for me, but see, I have tracked down over 800 descendants that I know descended from this family of Stones. Now, the Beerses didn't have any children, but they were in the she was a Stone,
Mm-hmm.
see? She was one of the daughters, the oldest daughter. And then there's all those people that descended from Dr. Reagan, the Whitfields, the Barnetts, all of these people, Harrises, just on and on and on. Okay, so that letter is we were talking last week about originals. Here this was, cannot be replaced. And this is the kind of thing that thieves are taking out of big libraries, not just ours. But who would know that you take out one precious sheet?
Folded inside.
It was folded inside this book. Looking through this book, it could easily be slipped out because it hadn't fallen out of the book in all the examining I'd done of this book before. But it won't fall out of that book anymore. It will be in a glass case from here on because this is a treasure. And it verifies the time that he was over there in Shreveport sick. I'll tell you something else about that. He died there in March. That's 3 months later, less than 3 months later, 2.5 months later. And roads were so bad, and of course embalming was not available, and she couldn't bring him home to bury him. She had to bury him in Shreveport. And they were financially independent, and she put a memorial stone at his grave. But she was not happy. Now this I know from family tradition. She was not happy about Dr. Beers being buried in Shreveport away from the family. And the family was burying at Youngblood at that time. So, several months later, she went through all the legal, after she had put a memorial stone at his grave, went through all the legal procedure to bring his remains to Youngblood in a wagon drawn by mules, traveling mostly at night. And in the transport of his remains from Shreveport, they lost the base part of the tombstone. And today, my brother, who was also a history bug, David F.D. Waldrop, learned this story and told it to me years ago. Says, go to Youngblood Cemetery and you will see that that tombstone is just a slab. It does not have the base. It was lost on the road to from Shreveport. And they just went ahead and buried him and put the slab up. And his grave is there today, and so is hers, in Youngblood Cemetery. And he died in Shreveport, Louisiana on March the 3rd, and he wrote this letter on January the 7th of that same year. This Dr. Beers then left his estate to a widow, and of course it went through procedure of nephews and nieces, and that's the very property that I have investigated in the courthouse. And the other nieces and nephews cheated my father and his sister out of their part. And that's where the coal mining is today. And when I found this, I understood that my father had a grievance that he never talked about. But he was cheated out of his inheritance because the records in the courthouse say these are the only people surviving who have a right to claim this estate of William H. Beers, except 2 minor children. This is in the records. John W. Stone and Aura Stone. Nobody ever signed for those 2 children. They were, see, this was 10 years after this, I guess, and that would make him, my father, about
15 years old.
And he was living with his mother's people, the Wyatts, because his mother was dead too by then. And nobody ever signed for them. So Kay Baker was judge when I was doing this. And I looked him up. He'd been my boy, and I said, you know these things. What is the situation here if I go into this in detail? He said, if your father had ever made a claim after he reached adulthood, no law in the world could cheat him out of it. But he never made a claim. And it's too late now. You can sue, but it'll just spend your lifetime in court on it. Says you won't win, it'll just be in court. And they'll eat it up. And I said, well, I know, and that's enough. No need to go through court procedure. It wouldn't be much anyway. Of course, it would have gone. The property finally got to people that did cash in on it. But anyway, it's strange how a historical thread will go and go and go. And this shoe fell this week, and it sent me in another spin.
As we find another treasure. Well, very good. Thank you for sharing this with us. And each and every Thursday, it's always super interesting.
I went through a number of Dr. Reagan's cases, and we'll talk about those at another time because we've run out of time. But one interesting one, well, he goes through pregnancies of women and how they treated them and so on, which is very interesting. But one man's horse threw him. And he lived 4 days. And what they did for him in that 4 days is an eye-opener. Four doctors were involved in the time of the 4 days, and yet he died. He had a fractured skull, and they had no equipment to be sure about that. And, of course, his brain just exploded. But this is names and everything. This is the man at Blackmore.
I'll be clear.
This is he gave in detailed write-ups on his cases.
Well, we look forward to...
Of course, these books are documents, too.
Yes.
Because they're in his handwriting, and it's beautiful.
It really is.
Now,
Outstanding
Dr. Reagan he was very serious about this doctrine business. And you see, his writing is Quinine was a main. We'll talk about the medicines they use
All right.
another time.
Very good. Thank you for bringing this program.
I've
We
loved
appreciate
it.
it. It's
This is-
always fun.
My light was on late last night.
I can tell by the smile on your face. To our viewing and listening audience, thank you for being with us today. We invite you to join us each and every Thursday as Mrs. LeGrone shares history of the Arklatex, and it's always an eye-opener each day that she comes in. We hope you enjoy our
I
program.
want you to know that computers can't do this.
That is true. That is true.
I still have people pushing me to get on the computer, but computers don't dig in old files like this, and if somebody doesn't dig, it won't ever be discovered.
Very true. May I remind everybody once again that the Heritage and Genealogical Association will have their meeting next Monday night
Right.
at 7 o'clock, and all the members...
We'll be planning the Christmas activities also.
All the members are expected, and guests are
You
welcome.
bet.
Anything else before
Things
we
are
sign
looking
off?
up. Eventually we're going to tear that extra part of the old offices down there and make that look sharp. It's sharp inside
Oh, it
now.
really
We're
is.
meeting in it, but we have some tearing away to do, which is heavy work. and
Good.
We'll get it.
Good. Coming up next is Sue Smith and the County Fair Grapevine, and a lot of activities going on. Sue is going to
Spreading
she's
out.
going to expand her
Lamar
business, and
is
Lamar's
gonna
probably
take
going to
it
play
easy.
golf.
Yeah, he's gonna
And
play
Lamar,
golf.
I didn't say that when I go down there and visit you. I didn't
bet
accuse you of
you'll
doing
find
that.
him on the golf course.
Okay, but things are happening down there. I think you almost had to have a number to stand in line yesterday, so that's
I
good.
saw how they plastered the front with all the instructions.
To our viewing audience, thank you for being with us. We invite you to join us this same time tomorrow